I was able to visit Tikal, Guatemala in early 2024. And primary reason was to visit the Tikal ruins. Part of the charm of visiting the ruins was the trip to and from. So you got to cross from Belize into Guatemala, and we got to see the differences between the two countries. It allowed us to see the rural areas. We got to see the small stores, the people riding about on their motorcycles, truck hauling fruit to and from places. It was just their day-to-day life, and we got to encounter it and experience it. The wildlife along the way, the crazy roadways where it's just controlled chaos as you drive. There are these giant potholes, and they have speed police, which are their way of adjusting people's speed, and they are these large humps in the middle of the roadway that you are guaranteed to bottom out on when you drive over them. So everybody just crawls over them very slowly. When you're driving on the roadways, there's road hazards, and they easily just move into the opposing lane, if you can say lane. And they move over there, and the traffic coming the other way just adjusts their speed, and they just move back over, and it's all chill. Like, we passed people riding horses down the road. We saw the police or military in their little technical. They were all business. My experience was pleasant, welcoming, and positive from both the Guatemalans and the Belizeans that we came across. Our guide was Tikal, and he was from a small village between Tikal and a small border town outside where we crossed over. In a simple conversation with him, I learned about his family. I learned that he had a thriving fish farm that did real well up until the time of COVID, and now he was working as a guide to raise money so he could get it back up and running. These interpersonal connections with the various people along the way, it's how you really learn about a country and the people. His knowledge and guidance at the site was very much appreciated and incredibly beneficial. So Tikal National Park of Guatemala, the largest pre-Columbia Maya city in archaeological terms found to this day. I say that because as you drive and you look around on your way there and you can read the terrain and the landscape, you can see the ruins that are still lying under the surface. It's easy to tell. You start looking and you see the shapes and the patterns, and they're unmistakable. Tikal structures date back to the 4th century BC, and as a society, the city lasted until the 10th century AD. It's found in the jungle rainforest environment, and it once had a population as high as 90,000 people at its peak. Tikal is covered with limestone carved structures, and they're large structures that vary in size. All the limestone was locally sourced, and the areas that they quarried the limestone from were then plastered, and they used them as reservoirs and collected rainwater to be used for the city. There was no other water source near Tikal. This is an urban city, so it had palaces, temples, ball courts. I believe there were 6 ball courts identified, had large and small temples, residences, small minor plazas. There was a great plaza, administration buildings, palaces. There are altars and burial areas. The temples have these very elaborately carved lintels that are still intact and in good condition. There were numerous stelas that are these giant carved stones, and then there's these elaborate stucco masks and lots of glyphs carved into the surrounding stone and the large structures. Those carvings could be anything from a snapshot representing a part of a ceremony, a roller, a god, or maybe even a popular ball court player, which they believe one might have represented. So if you don't know what they use the ball courts for in Maya tradition, look it up. Insane games. I'm going to do a separate video on their ball games because I came home and kept reading up on them, and really good stuff. So we toured all of these different sites and areas. You can climb up the temples. There are staircases on some of them that are built on the side. They're extremely steep. They vary from 125 foot high all the way to 230 foot high. Once you get to the top, breathtaking view. You look out over the jungle canopy. It's just a breath of fresh air up there. You look around the temples and the other features below, and it's just amazing. After a long, hot day of touring, we were given free rein to wander about, and we set a meeting time, and that was it. We were turned loose. And I spent this time going deeper and deeper into the backs of these various structures. You walk through the areas that were probably residences of scholars, teachers, traders, various people that were probably of moderate importance in the society. You have to think about those palaces and temples. And the rulers would have these elaborate ceremonies that they needed the public to witness and see. And they lived within those temple complexes as well. And they eventually were buried in them. You walk through these stone structures and travel in and out of corridors, passages. You climb stairways and you touch. You just reach out and touch that stone and you think of the history. 90,000 people living day-to-day life, eating in the plazas, watching ceremonies. It's just living in this amazing society of these limestone features. Another cool observation, when you're on the very edge of the city by the jungle, if you look at the ground, you can just see sherds of pottery, hammerstones, limestone chips. Just everywhere you look, there's debitage and signs of the prior culture. You're going to see a ton of spider monkeys while you're there. You're going to hear some howler monkeys if you're lucky. And when you walk in and out of Tikal, be sure to look at the excavated features and buildings that are on the outskirts of the main temples. Also, look around at the countless other areas of raised earth that are covered with vegetation that have not been uncovered yet. There are clearly more buildings, and they're everywhere. After we left Tikal, I started looking at the landscape as we were driving back to Belize. And you start to notice these raised areas, and you can just tell that there's other buildings outside of Tikal that are just waiting to be uncovered. So it gets you to wonder, how many structures remain out there yet, undiscovered? Well, there was a study in 2018, and they used LiDAR, and they uncovered approximately 60,000 uncharted structures that could be seen that lie under the jungle canopy. Never uncovered yet. And based on these findings, it's now believed that the northern Guatemala Mayan population was possibly 7 to 11 million people. Where are all those people? Where is the Mayan culture? We have some ideas on what happened. But first, thank you for checking out our video. And I hope that if you like history and cultural topics, that you'll please give us a like, subscribe, and comment. All the pictures and videos were provided by Timber Adventures. The Mayan civilization most likely collapsed gradually over many years, but around 900 AD, it was noted that some of the larger cities, Tikal being one of them, were abandoned. Multiple factors led to the decline. Drought. We had mentioned before that Tikal had no real water supply other than the reservoirs of rainwater. We also know historically a drought did occur. Environmental degradation from farming overuse, sapping the nutrients from the soil, and the lack of rain as well. Warfare. The Mayan cities fought amongst themselves. Caracol and Tikal fought bitterly against one another. Other cities were torn between larger ones and fell into decline. Disease. Large groups of people within close quarters. Failure of crops leading to nutritional issues, which also leads to illness. Climate change. Sea levels rose, flooding along the coast pushed all the people inlands. So where is the culture? There's culture in the clothing that some wear. There's culture in the food. We were able to have a handmade Mayan meal of beef and chicken fajitas, but with the traditional maize, squash, beans, and chili peppers, along with some of the best hibiscus tea I've ever had. There's culture in the people. Over 50% of Guatemalans are of Mayan descent. Those same people still practice aspects of the Mayan religion with ceremonies, dance, and rituals. There's culture in the agriculture practices with the slash and burn and terrace farming. The Mayan culture and traditions are still very evident in the surrounding communities, in the traditions, and the people. Tikal was but one city within a very large empire. I look forward to sharing pictures and videos of other cities that I visited while in Belize. We'll talk about Caracol, Cahal Pech, and Xunantunich.